Charlotte has a question out of the gate.
Oh, she does. Okay. Let's see what we have here, Charlotte. Idaho. Represent seller and have a signed around offer since 5/31. Seller's disclosure was sent to the buyer's agent, but never returned to me, the list agent. Is it mandatory to receive a seller's disclosure signed by the buyer? Yes. Yes, it is absolutely important and imperative that all parties receive a signed around copy of the seller disclosure. So you're entitled to that. We're just talking about a lazy agent. So just, yeah, just kind of hound them a little bit more, Charlotte. Make sure you get that back from them. It's important because we all need it for the file. You know, we all take our cues from the states. So if the state says, hey, you got to have this in the file and it's got to be all signed around, then voila. You know, ultimately their broker's going to get it to you. Their support staff will get it to you. If they didn't in the very end, we could file a formal complaint with the Coeur d'Alene Association and with the IREC. And the real estate commission would come down on them pretty hard because we do need that piece of paper. So yeah, signed around by all parties and delivered to all parties too. That's we'll get into that into paperwork. So welcome everybody. It is June 14th, 2017. This edition of Fuse Training. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get into paperwork and we're going to separate it out. 8 weeks ago we started this process and we did all the paperwork, the listing paperwork and the selling paperwork in one webinar, and it went on for almost 3 hours, so it was pretty long. I want to condense that, so this one's just going to be listing paperwork, and there's enough there I want to keep these webinars down to about an hour and a half or so, otherwise they just get too long and everyone loses interest. So next week we're going to do the selling paperwork and multiple offers and all that stuff and how we basically structure those offers. So for now, listing paperwork. And the segue, the question that Charlotte brought up was the seller disclosure in the state of Idaho. Yes, it needs to be signed by all parties. And paperwork, once it is signed by all parties, every state that we operate in now, which is 5 of them, they all require that signed documentation be delivered to the client. And or a customer, it doesn't matter. So you've got to have that paperwork into our customer or clients and make sure that they've got signed, completed forms. And they do ask that in audits, you know, was this delivered, was that delivered, and everything else. So if you've got an agent on the other side, I don't want to say obstinate, let's say on vacation. So we'll be nice to them. They're on vacation, they don't get you that paperwork. Someone in the office has it. It's not imperative it happen right away. So Charlotte, you're probably okay, but when you get closer to closing, a week away, and you don't have it, then there's a problem. Then let me know about that one-on-one. But sometimes people get sloppy with their paperwork, especially once a deal is signed around. They're like, hey, fantastic, you know, they're looking forward to that check, and they forget some of the little details that are really important. We're in real estate. There's a lot of paperwork. We all have to stay on top of it. Speaking of paperwork, we'll let everyone know that Angela Peterson has started with us. She's replacing Heather, so she's kind of our paperwork guru. So we're going to send out after this webinar, we'll go ahead and send out notice to everybody and her contact information. She still gets all of Heather's emails. She gets paperwork at kellywright.com, which is where we send paperwork. And we set up files. You can also do it up in paperless pipeline if you choose that as well. And if you choose paperless pipeline, Stephanie can set you up with a username and password, and you can get your paperwork done that way as well. So we are flexible. We are like Romanian gymnasts. We can handle any kind of paperwork that you send us. You can email it to us. You can go ahead and send it through paperless pipeline. You can fax it to us, or we had an agent yesterday just drop off a bunch of paper files, plop, right on the desk. So, and we'll scan them and we'll get them going and all that. So we don't really care how it's delivered. We just want to make sure we've got it. Now, as far as paperwork goes, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, we do not pay until the paperwork is complete. So we want to make sure that you guys have complete file And if you have a complete file, and preferably a week or so before it's going to close, we can close that sucker and get you paid same day, usually. This is a busy time of year, so I do want people to realize that June, July, August obviously are busy real estate months. And if we have the paperwork, we can process it pretty fast. But if we have to process, let's say, 30 deals in one day, that's a lot. It's not a matter of just saying, hey, we got a check, we'll write you a check or direct deposit. We have to go through each file. We have to track everything down. We have to verify every page is signed, initialed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and we'll get more into the signings, the initials, and stuff like that. But once we have a complete file and we get paid, we will turn around and pay you within 24 hours is our policy. So yes, paperwork. It's a very, very important component to this industry. Obviously, these are contracts, and they've typically been around for decades and decades. Each state has preferred real estate attorneys that they go through to kind of supplement them and add to them and change them around and do what they're going to do on the legal side. But effectively, the paperwork is meant for people who are not attorneys, okay? And we just have spaces we fill in. One thing while we do that, I want to make sure that everyone understands that you're not an attorney, and every state looks at you to basically refer your clients to attorneys if any question comes up. It's really important that if those questions come up, to not, even if you think you're pretty confident in the answer, and that's fine, you can share that answer. What I do is I say, well, I'm not an attorney, and this is something you should really talk to an attorney about, but in my experience, here's what I've seen in the past, but don't rely on that as far as how you're going to make your decisions. Make sure they go to an attorney, especially if it is complicated. I mean, if you're talking about an easement issue, you've got some waterfront easement rights, you've got, it could be a utility easement, it could be a fence line that's, 3 feet on one side of the property line, whatever's the case, and you've got neighbors that are arguing about it. I mean, we don't want to get in the middle of that. We want to refer our clients to attorneys. Now, most clients, they don't want to deal with attorneys because attorneys are expensive. So they a lot of times they want to rely on us and say, hey, what should I do? So be very careful about that. The paperwork is designed for us to fill in those blanks and not to manipulate those forms. Sometimes I see it's not always how do I put this in this politically correct world? It's not always a foreign-born person, but oftentimes it is, where they see a contract and they start Xing out paragraphs. And then they go down and down and they X out more paragraphs. And I'm like, oh, come on. You can't start Xing out and crossing out these paragraphs, because we are not allowed to do that. So when they start Xing out paragraphs, or they want to manipulate some document, in a grand fashion, that's when you want to bring in an attorney. And real estate attorneys typically aren't as expensive as litigators and defense attorneys and stuff like that. So typically you can go to a good real estate attorney that specializes in closings and just say, hey, for 15 minutes, can you help us with this question? It's worth it. When it's a big transaction or they're getting funky that way and starting to X out all sorts of different verbiage in the paperwork. So again, they're meant for us to just fill in the blanks. We fill in the price. We fill in the dates. Every contract in America, contract law requires a start date and an end date. And so we have those dates on there, and then they sign an initial where it is very obvious. Okay, and we'll get into that as we get into, we'll stick with Washington paperwork, but you guys will see that as we dive into it. So any questions on paperwork out there as far as what we can and can't do? Go ahead and ask those questions in the chat room. Warren, I see your question. Yes, Heather has already left. So she's moving on, and that's fine. Angela is great, and so we've got good support that is sliding right in to help us. Okay, so we'll take questions as we go. So there's our fuse outline right there, and we'll try to stick to it the best I can. But if any of you guys have seen me in action, then you know that I go off topic a lot. It's just the flavor of our webinars. Okay, so I showed you all that, and now let's go into, we'll go into the Spokane MLS. Just because it's easy, the transaction desk is pretty easy here. We use transaction desk in the Northwest MLS as well, and also in Boise, I know we do. Let me just make sure I got the right numbers there. Okay. The transaction desk is just an electronic format. We have Form Simplicity in North Idaho. There's a lot of different electronic formats that are coming around right now. It's a big piece of the marketplace, so everyone's trying to get to that. And so transaction desk is just one software platform, just like Paragon. You know, in Idaho we use Flex MLS, we use Paragon, we use Matrix in Seattle, and the RMLS has their own software. So let's do this. Let's start with paperwork again. Then I'm gonna dive over to the MLS and kind of go through a listing. So listings. Okay, this is that golden nugget we're all looking for. We're panning out there. We're up on the river. Our feet are cold. We're digging for gold. We're panning for gold. These listings are the gold we want. This is where we make our money, at least half of it, and it's a big component to it. Some people specialize in listings. Other people want to specialize with buyers. And most of us do both. As we get it, we can certainly do both. It's not so complicated that we can't. But I think it's just a marketing platform that different people use. So you guys can do that individually as you see fit. But when we get a listing, it's like, okay, great. We're sitting around drinking tea. If it's Alex, it's Boone's Farm wine with his friends. And sorry, Alex, I had to get that in. So anyway, we're just sitting around and we're drinking, we're socializing, we're talking. It could be at the grocery store, it could be at the park, you know, wherever it's going to be. And a friend or even a stranger says, "Oh, you're in real estate. I'm thinking about listing my house." Well, great. Tell me more about that. You know, where do you live? What are you thinking about? When are you going to list it? What are your plans? And typical, just kind of light sales conversations. Talking about real estate, as most of you know already, is probably the easiest sell in the world. This is not, you're not selling refrigerators to someone who already has one, or trucks or cars to someone who already has them. Everybody wants real estate. Everybody, for the most part, sees their biggest chunk of wealth in real estate. A lot of people get very wealthy off real estate. Other people just look at it as a place to live and raise their family and don't want to pay rent. They'd rather have equity, and that all makes sense. So there's conversations galore. And I have, over a couple decades, had so many different conversations in so many strange places that it'd be impossible to list. But let's just say those conversations happen with just about everybody. So number one, you drum them up. So again, you're at the park, you're having coffee, you meet a stranger, whomever, and they say they want to list their house. Where do you go from there? Number one, just gather information. Get as much information about them. Number one, any type of sale you do, you want to get to know your client as best you can. So understand their needs. And when you're selling, you really got to listen well. You understand their needs, you let them talk, you let them, ask really good questions about what their goals are, what they're trying to do. Maybe they're downsizing, maybe they're growing family. It might be a single person, now they're getting married and they've already got a couple kids. They got twins in the oven, who knows? So you want to just find out about what their situation is, and we are there to help. And the more you can help them, the more they perceive that you can help them, the better locked in you're going to be to get this listing. And so let's say they go, okay, great. I want to list my house in a couple weeks. I'm just really not sure where to start. First thing you want to do is make sure you set an appointment. The grocery store is great. The coffee shop or the bar, that's all good. But you want to make sure that you set an appointment. Can I come over to your house and take a look at it? Do you want to meet for coffee on Tuesday, and we can really go over the details about what I do? So that's where you're on the selling part of it. I won't get too far into that. That's what our sales and marketing class is all about. That's in, I think, week 3, Alex. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think it's week 3. We'll do sales and marketing. But so you're selling them, and they say, yep, you're great, love you, want to do this listing with you. So what do? You're like, okay, let's start. I'm going to put the paperwork together for the listing, so make it official, because the state requires that we have certain paperwork in place. Now, every state has a listing agreement, and they vary. Here in Spokane, for example, the state has their Northwest MLS listing agreement, and then there's a special Spokane listing agreement. Same can be for most areas. They've got a statewide form and then a local form you can use. They're pretty much all the same. You know, verbiage changes a little bit here and there, but effectively, it's a listing agreement to say I have the legal right to sell your house. And with a listing agreement, you absolutely have to get one. That is required by every state. Now, sometimes I get the question about a buyer's agreement. Buyer's agreement, you don't need. A buyer's agreement is just something that is basically, it more or less protects you in a little bit. Actually, I shouldn't even say that. It doesn't really protect you at all, because every state has determined that a buyer's agreement really means nothing. But it does kind of lock in the buyer to you. They don't know that. So they think, hey, I've got this contract. I can't cancel it at any time. A listing agreement is required, though. So you make sure you've got the legal paperwork that says, I can list this house. So what does a listing agreement look like? Well, let's take a look at one here in Washington. Statewide forms, and usually right up front. Okay. Exclusive sale and listing agreement, and then you see an exclusive agency sale and listing agreement. Now, agency and non-agency. An agency agreement is not something you want. More importantly, I should say, the exclusive sale and listing agreement is what you want to use. An agency agreement allows them to still market the property and not pay you a commission if they find a buyer for it. An exclusive sale and listing agreement, basically, if anyone comes and buys this property, you get a commission on it. So that's the one you want to use. So let's take create new standalone form. Now again, in Transaction Desk, you can go ahead and fill in spaces, and it'll save it, and it'll bring that up, whether it's a date or a seller name or something like that. So pretty slick. Our forms are getting good with the Adobe Echo sign and all that. Okay, so let me get this guy up over here, and let's take a look at it. Exclusive sale and listing agreement. You've got a seller, pretty easy. What you want to do with this part is confirm it with, well, I always, before I even take a listing, I check tax records, so the county assessor website, and find out who is on that record. So sometimes the record might say Mr. and Mrs. or James and Deborah Jones, and then all of a sudden all you're dealing with is Deborah Jones. And she's like, yeah, I want to sell this house. And then red flags go up. It's like, well, wait a second, this is a community property state, and Deborah Jones may not have the right to sell this house without her husband's signature. And she might say, well, we're separated and we're getting a divorce and blah, blah, blah. That's fine, except we need to know that. We need legal documentation allowing her to sell this from him, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So check county records and see that the name on this listing agreement matches the county records, because ultimately the title report is going to come back in that name. So if the title report comes back as Mr. and Mrs. and there's only one name on here, you got to figure out. There could be an affidavit, someone, there may have been a sudden death, and all these things happen in life. So whether it's divorce, death, whatever happens, we want to make sure that the right person is selling the house. So do a little background research on that, and then you won't have to feel as much pain on the back end when the closing documents are in, and it's like, whoa, wait a second, time out. We got to clean up a cloud on title or some messy issue, and that can delay the sale. It typically doesn't kill it. It's just, sometimes there's AKA affidavits, also known as, or there's just other legal documentation, divorce decree, whatever it's going to be, some other legal documentation that we have to provide to make sure that escrow knows what they're doing and who they're signing. Okay, so then the firms, Kelly Wright Real Estate, and then the listing term would be a date. So again, you always have to have that start date. The exclusive right to sell the real property, commonly known as the address. So commonly 123 Oak Street, city of Port Orchard, county of, I shouldn't have picked a hard one. Port Orchard, what would that be? Island County, maybe? Maybe Kitsap. Anyway, so the county and the zip. Okay, and this is a Washington form. Oregon similar, Idaho similar, Alabama is similar, Florida is similar. So they always look a little bit different, but most of the verbiage is very, very similar. Okay, agency, dual agency. So that's where they appoint you, the real estate agent, as a seller's listing broker. Okay. Now, broker, agent, I'm going to go to my grave hating this state of Washington for this, but we call agents brokers in Washington. And then nationally, they're typically agents, and the designated broker is a broker, and it gets very confusing. But basically, a broker is the real estate agent, and a designated broker is the managing broker or supervising broker. So it's very confusing in Washington. I don't know whose ego got in the way of that decision a few years ago, but it is what it is. When I refer, because we're a nationwide company, when I refer to people, it's typically an agent and a broker, just to make things easier. That's how we do it in Oregon, and Idaho, and Alabama, and Florida. It's just Washington is goofy. Okay, so a list date. Again, we have to have that listing date, the start date, and the commission. So the commission this is one thing where people get confused. Traditionally, a real estate commission is 6%. And that's where you would put in a 6% of the sales price. And then a selling commission, the commission that we're offering the other firm to bring a buyer and buy this house, is 3%. Okay? So that was the standard commission in a lot of ways. A lot of big brokerages, or we'll call them the big box brokerages, they still require this. And they won't take a listing for less unless it is under specific circumstances. And the reason is they make 30%, 40%, 50%. They don't want you giving away their commission. That's how they look at it. We don't do it that way because we have a flat fee. We let you determine what kind of commission you need to do to get the sale. So 6% and 3% is traditional. Now, let's say you go in and it's Aunt Thelma. And Aunt Thelma's like, oh, little Jimmy, you've been my favorite nephew forever. And you love Aunt Thelma, and you don't want to take a whole big chunk of her money. So you want to do, let's say, 4%. But then you're like, oh, you know what? I really want to incent the other party to come in and buy this house. So I don't want to just put 2% here. That might negate a few buyers, or at least those buying agents that are like, I'm not going to go look at that property. That commission's too low. They're not supposed to. By law, they are absolutely not supposed to do this, but some of them do. There's in the back of their mind, they look at the commissions, and they're like, you know what? It's not worth my time to go out there. So in this case, I would typically do like 2.75. And that way I'm getting 1.25 points off of Aunt Thelma because I love her so much. Or maybe Aunt Thelma is like, hey, you know what? I'm going to sell this house, but I'm going to go buy a condo downtown. And then you can get a full commission on that and help me buy that. So you want to just kind of adjust commissions a little bit, but this is where you do it. So, sometimes it's 5%, and we see 2.5 and 2.5. So 2.5 to the selling side, 2.5 to the listing side. But again, this is where we do the commissions, and you can always start with 6, and you kind of do the presumption of that full commission. They might have bought the property expecting, or bought and sold properties in the past where that was the full commission, and or you're really going to market it. You've got a lot of money and effort and energy you're going to put into this, and you're like, hey, look, I'm worth 6%. Or it could be a very cheap house. It could be, let's say, $100,000 listing. and 3% is only $3,000. Conversely, it could be a $1 million property and 3% is $30,000, and you're okay with 1.5%. That's 15,000. Whatever you decide. Any questions on that? You can go ahead and run it by me. But that's the second most important component to this. The most important component is going to be, filling out all this information and getting the dates correct, and then the commission. And then for the most part, this is just seller's warranties, lockbox, closing, multiple listing service, the MLS, attorney's fees. The undersigned is the sole owner. There again, yes or no. And then they sign it. And then we sign it, and the real estate firm signs it. So I guess that could be me signing it as the real estate firm, and then broker's signature. So again, just use Kelly Wright Real Estate. You're fine there. Every market is Kelly Wright Real Estate of Alabama, Kelly Wright Real Estate of Oregon, Kelly Wright Real Estate of Yakima, and so on and so forth. 17 of them. Okay, now let's go back down here. Big Alex, any new questions? Take a look at these. Humor. Oh, Charlotte's got an antidote. Writing the buyer, Paul and Lori Cloud. Funny. Ha, 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 that's very funny. Okay, I'll read that. If you guys can't see it. When I was a new agent, I was told that we wanted no cloud on title. However, on my land listing, I was also writing for the buyer, Paul and Lori Cloud. So there was a cloud on title. That's pretty funny. Thank you, Charlotte. Yeah, if you guys have stories, anecdotes, jokes, we love them here at Kelly Wright. Okay, so no more questions there. Exclusive sale and listing agreement. Now, let's go ahead and get rid of this sucker. Go back to forms. And let's go back to our agenda. Listing agreements. We did agency versus exclusive sales. So when you're in an agency agreement is also kind of referred to as a customer agreement as well. You do have permission to list a house, but again, you're not guaranteed that commission. And so avoid the agency agreements the best you can. We can represent clients as a customer without paperwork, but it means we cannot negotiate for them. We can simply fill out forms for them, and we cannot negotiate. We can't go in and say, hey, I've got permission. I know what their price point is. You're there going back and forth with the other agent, and you don't necessarily need to deal with your client as much because you've got that permission. When it's a customer, someone brings in an offer, for example, you just present it. You don't say whether it's good or it's bad or you'd accept it or not. You don't negotiate it. You just present it. And they say, nope, I don't want to do that. You simply ask them, well, what do you want to do? So a little bit different between customer and client, but and also a little bit different between agency and exclusive sale and listing agreement. Again, just by default, always get that exclusive sale and listing agreement, and don't even bother with the agency agreement. Okay, I keep taking my glasses off. Oh, there it is. Like a hair like bugging me right in my eye. But I got it. So. Okay, condos, multifamily, land, and commercial. Let's dive right back into those, and you can kind of take a look at, they're pretty much the same, but there's little variances in there, okay? There's also manufactured home. There's vacant land, listing input. We'll get into listing inputs here in a little bit. Right now, I just want to do the exclusive sale and listing agreement. Condominiums, referral.
Did you get Brian's question?
Oh, sure.
Can you cover, I think it's FIRPTA, F-I-R-P-T-A. It's in the chat.
I logged in from my computer. Anything going on yet? Yeah, Brian, we've started. Well, that's the beginning. Brian, I'll cover FIRPTA. after this. I want to brush up on it. So I don't want to give you misinformation. But yeah, and there's some new stuff to FERPTA that I haven't gotten updated on yet. So let me send something out to everybody. Alex, will you make a note? And I'm going to send a note out to everybody on MailChimp on FERPTA.
Yeah.
You get a copy of the training outline agenda. Yes, I will get that training outline to you, Lynn. We're adjusting it because this is the last 8 weeks. That was our first 8 weeks trial, and this time we're going to move it around a little bit. So I don't have the selling agenda for next week yet, but I'll get that done and we'll send that out. And again, it's right here. So here's what we're going through today. So condos, multifamily, land, and commercial is next. You know. Okay, let's go into, well, there's a business as well, exclusive sale and listing agreement. Let's try that. So there's a bunch of them. There's, a commercial building, but there's also a business opportunity with that as well, and that's just a business. So for example, let's say it's a little pizza building, a pizza company, and they didn't own the building. And so you're just selling the business, and then the lease still goes with the business, and you're leasing from the building owner. But sometimes they actually own the business and they own the building as well. So in that case, there are 2 different listing agreements. And the commercial stuff I'll get more into in one of our webinars coming up in week 6, I think, something like that. But for now, I just want to kind of show you the different listing agreements. So we have very similar terms on these: seller, firm, list term, address, agency, dual agency, who's going to be the listing agent on it, the list date, the commissions, and so on and so forth. So very, very similar for that business opportunity. So there's not a whole lot of difference to these. Let me see another one. Statewide. Farm and ranch. Farm and ranch. I just did one of those. Business sale. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Let's go into the, I mean, you guys get the point on the listing agreement. So pretty much a start date, the commission, and who's going to be listing it. And then that gives you the right to do that listing. The input forms, now they're kind of the same information when you actually do, the listing. I don't use these input forms very often. But every MLS has them, and it basically is just 50 questions of what is the property, where is it. So on this one, we've got the county, the city, the area, the street, and all that different information: the listing price, date expiration, all this stuff. Property information, the SOC, that's the selling commission. That would be that other 3%. Right here, it could be variable selling office commission comments. So if it's a short sale, sometimes it is, you could say 6%, 3% to the selling office, but it's a variable commission depending on what's approved with the short sale. So it can change there. But if it does ever change, you want to make sure that you notice that and you make sure that other people are notified of that. Square footage, lot size source, typically county. Again, you always want to go to the county records to determine a lot of the official information. Actually, that's segue, because we like doing segues. Let me just show you the assessor's website really quickly. We'll go to Spokane Assessor. There they are. So again, before taking a listing or while you're taking a listing, you really want to go in here and make sure. Okay, let's see. I've got one recently. Let me look back at my files here. 292924 East 34th. This is one I'm going to try to get under contract tonight. Let's get rid of that so I can search. Okay, this cute little house up on the South Hill. There's the lot. There it is. Parcel information. It shows that Jordan C. Longacre is the owner. So I want to put that typically in that listing agreement. I want to have that C in there, Jordan C. And then I want him to sign everything Jordan C. And then his home address. So he basically is living on the west side, and this is a rental. And then there's a printer friendly up here. Easy enough. It tells me what the taxes are. It tells me what the legal description is. Square footage, land size, 6,200 square feet. And tax year of 2017. Let's see here. There's the appraiser who assessed it, Stephanie, and there's her phone number. So Spokane Assessor, they've got a pretty good website. It gives us a lot of information here. It was built in 1940, 864 square feet, forced air, heating, 3 bedrooms, 1 full bath. Now on this one, he actually redid his attic and made it into a really nice bedroom area and put a half bath in there. So I know that this is not accurate. So and he added that square footage. So in the listing agreement, when it says, the input sheet, when it says assessed square footage, I want to put 864. Okay, so here it says ASF, assessed square footage. I'd put 864 there. But then in the notes, I would put, it's more. The square footage is more. So a lot of times they have assessed square footage and they have actual square footage. And so you want to add in that square footage. When it comes to square footage, do not add in the garage. I know it's very common in Seattle to add the garage to get as much square footage as possible when you're buying a small little $1 million home. But officially, do not add in the square footage for the garage. And when you get to assessed square footage, they're also going to be talking about above ground square footage. So they don't want to include anything below grade. Even if it's like a split level and the below grade is just 2 or 3 feet below grade, and then there's big windows there, you still don't want to use that. So that's why they have assessed square footage and they have regular square footage. So when you do regular square footage, that below grade finished square footage you can use, if that makes sense. So yeah, email me if you have any questions on square footage and how to kind of manipulate it a little bit to be accurate, legally accurate, but also show as much as possible on the listing. Lot dimensions, waterfront footage, pool, zoning code, zoning jurisdiction. You can kind of pull these down, city, county, see remarks. In this case, it would be county, because we're going back here. Property information is the county assessor's website, and that's the case for every county in America. It shows when the last sale price was $161,000 in 2009. We're selling it for $179,000. And then the taxes. So I can see right here, okay, annual charges $1,600. So that when people ask, and it's in the listing, you want to make sure you add that in, because people want to know what their taxes are. Sometimes, little house can be $1,600 a year, so that's $133 a month, or it could be $3,000 a year, almost double that. And it's all over the place. But so, $133 a month or $266 a month, that's a big deal. I mean, that's the difference of, well, obviously of $133, but that can make a big deal to someone who's on a tight budget. So taxes make a difference. So do look those up. And so on and so forth. So that's the assessor's website. Gives us an idea of some of the information on the house that we might not know. Another thing I do is I pull up previous listings on a house, and I'll get into that after we go through this form. But the listing form, listing input, sewer available, basement, check, check, check. Approved number of bedrooms, total covered parking. Let's say it's garage, 2-car garage and a carport. Then you could say 3 right there. Manufactured, green building information, if that's applicable. And there you get the interior features, finished square footage and unfinished square footage. So if they do have unfinished square footage in the basement and they finished an attic, well, this is where you add the finished component in. So you really want people to understand that there's assessed square footage, there's finished square footage, and there's also unfinished square footage. So there's 3 different types there. And obviously fireplaces, lower, upper, main, wood burning, both gas, wood, so on and so forth. So pretty self-explanatory, and most of you guys have taken a listing input class, and this is a little bit redundant, but yeah, it's basically going over this stuff step by step, and I don't want to get too deep into it. It'll take up a little bit too much time, but you know, kitchen, eating space, living room, dining room, den, office, number of bedrooms, upper, middle, and lower levels. Okay, so number of full baths, you know, let's say 1 upper, 2 on the middle, and 1 on the lower level. That's where you would put this. And let's say it's a 3.5 bath, and there's 2 upstairs, a master. So number of full baths in the upper would be 2. And then let's say a half bath on the main floor. And I don't know if I said 2.5 or 3.5, but let's just say 2.5. So 2 upper full baths and then 1 half bath on the main floor right there. Okay, marketing remarks. This is where you wax poetic and you just say, hey, this is a lovely, lovely house and one of the most sought after neighborhoods with tree-lined streets and gorgeous piece of property and all those great adjectives that you guys can come up with. We leave that up to your creative nature. So you want to make sure it's accurate, but you also want to make sure it's exciting. You know, this is the kind of stuff that the public's going to see. So, and oftentimes I make it so it's perfect. I can cut and paste this from the marketing remarks to a flyer, and I just use the same verbiage. So make sure that that is accurate. You know, obviously you can't say things about the schools or perfect for a family. There are different kind of triggers out there you want to avoid. That's all RESPA issues, Real Estate Settlement and Procedures Act. If you have a question on a trigger that you might be using in a marketing remark, let me know. A lot of the MLSs are very sophisticated now. So like the Northwest MLS, it'll catch trigger words and they'll send you a notice saying, hey, change this trigger word or we're going to fine you. And most MLSs can do that now. Okay. Let's see. Confidential broker-only remarks. So that's what you just want the other agents to see. Driving directions, you know, go west on Oak Street, go north on Hamilton for 2 blocks, and it's the house is right there. So pretty simple right there. You get all that stuff initialed by the seller. Okay, so they see it and fantastic. Now you don't have to get this. You can do a listing without this, but it does help. And if they won't do it, or you know, sometimes it's somebody you've worked with in the past and they just want you to relist the house, you already know this information. So, you know, you go to the county, you verify if the taxes have changed, but you can also go to the MLS. Okay. So, and that's really where we put the listing in the MLS. So in this case, in Spokane, we use Paragon. In Tri-Cities, we use Paragon and a couple other different local MLSs, we use Paragon as well. I know Sandpoint's Paragon, Matrix in Seattle, so on and so forth. So again, different software platforms. So a lot of times, and let's say, we'll use the one example I have, the 2924. So before I take the listing with Jordan, I go, okay, 2924, 34th. Let's see the history on this thing. There's 4 listings. Let's take a look. Okay. Now, one of them was one that expired. I'd let that expire so I could relist it as new. That was just something that the owner wanted, so I did that. This is the active one we have right now. This one sold way back in 2002. So, okay, I can go way back there. I know that because right there that it stands for 2002. And the pictures no longer are there, but I can see this information in here. I can see school district. There's the high school, Ferris, 6,200 square feet. Sometimes it asks about, and especially in Spokane, it asks about, you go south 34 blocks and you go east 29 blocks, thus the address 2924 East 34th. Pretty clearly marked out there. You know, when you get into suburbs and they've got windy streets, it gets a little more confusing. But school district, Spokane 81. So sometimes I'll print this out, and a lot of this information is in there. There's 1940. Total approximate square feet, 2128, but we know the assessed square footage is 864. So we verified that at county records. So the county assessor, boom, we saw that one. There's the 6,200 right there. There's the 864. Now, I just want to make a note about that. I want you guys to remember this as well. You don't do anything illegal. Don't make numbers up. There's liability there if you just make numbers up. In this case, it was done well. The assessed square footage is exactly what the assessor says, so no liability on our part. But now we've got 2,128 square feet. That's a whole lot different than 864. So what they're doing here is they're adding that attic, the remodeled attic space, and that's fine. But in this case, they're also adding an unfinished basement, and that's not so good. So this listing, the guy, Steve Hagen, that did this in 2002, I think was stretching it a bit at 2128. There's the tax parcel number there as well, and then different dates and all the different improvements and features. So tree, level, bus route, oversized lot, house is in good shape, so qualifies for FHA, VA, conventional cash. Basement full, says partially finished. That's a stretch because one room has a little bit of carpet in it, but I don't know that I would call it partially finished. Wood exterior, gas, heating, cooling, gravity. I don't know really what that means. I guess gravity, air conditioning. I don't know. Roof composition. If you guys don't know, composition's usually the roof type. That's the little sheets that have sand and grain on them, kind of glued onto them. Lockbox, vacant, public sewer, sewer connected, public water. Okay, so this is an old listing. I'm looking at that going, okay, how does that compare to mine? So the listing. So now I've got this listing input sheet. There's some other forms that I want from the seller before I put a listing in. So let's go back to forms. Actually, let me make sure I'm staying on track here. Ah, good. That's what I was thinking. So seller disclosure, lead-based paint, required forms. Okay, so listing input sheets, there's a little bit different ones for condos, multifamily, land, commercial, so on and so forth. Look at your MLS carefully and make sure that you're using the right form when you're getting that information, that listing input information. Okay, so we still have, we know that they want to sell with us. We've got our exclusive sale and listing agreement. We're setting up a date to go out and get that signed by them, but there's other forms that we're going to want to bring with us. Okay, let me go back here. Alex, I know you're on it. Let's see. Northwest MLS will input listings for us. Thanks, Leslie. Yeah, all MLSs will input it for you if you want. They usually charge a small fee. In Spokane, it's $6. I don't know if they charge Northwest MLS or not. Leslie, do they? If you can, let me know. But every MLS has people that will input it for you, usually for a nominal fee. I like doing it myself because it gives me control, and it really only takes about a half an hour or so. I can do it, you know. Actually, last night watching a very funny but bad movie, Brothers Grimsby. Yeah, pretty awful. My wife thinks I'm a bad parent to let my kids watch it. Okay, but let's see. Get a copy of your training. Let's see. Lynn, I answered that. Leslie says it's free. So Northwest MLS is free input, which is great. So check with your MLS and find out if there's a small fee like Spokane, $6, or if it's free like the Northwest MLS. And you can just send that listing input form to them, and they'll put it in for you. But we can also do it ourselves. And most MLSs, they require that you take a class in order to do it. The classes are really simple. It's kind of like what we're going over here is saying, hey, where it says address, put the address in there. Where it says listing amount, how much are you going to list it for? You put that in there and so on and so forth, bedrooms, bathrooms, etc. Not too complicated. We have very smart agents here, so you guys can figure this out pretty fast. But now we'll get into these other forms. Regardless of who's doing the input, you have to have certain forms. Federal law requires a lead-based paint form if the house is older than 1978. And then a seller disclosure is required by every state, at least that we operate in, and I'd be surprised if there's a state out there that does not require the seller disclosure. The seller disclosure is effectively where the seller's telling the buyer or potential buyer the history of the property. So you want to make sure that it's very accurate. You want to make sure that it's complete. And again, these are state laws and federal laws, so we do not want to skirt them. Let's dive into those. We'll go back here to forms. Show you kind of what the Washington state forms look like. Back to statewide forms. Hello. There we go. In Washington state, it's called the Form 17. Every state's got different form numbers, but effectively it's the same form. You're giving the public information about this property. Now, the property can be improved or unimproved. Effectively unimproved is just land. But improved is typically what we're using because it has been built. So now we know about the property, and we want to let the public know. Now, there are some exceptions in here. A lot of times the states, let's say grandma died and there is a house that she left to her family, and the family hasn't lived there for 40 years. They just don't know enough about this. Usually they do, but they haven't lived in it to see if there was a flood 3 years ago in the basement, or if there was some ants that were terminated. So they just don't know. So they're exempt from this form. I tell people to include it, but just mark don't know. But sometimes you get like builders, they don't want to do anything with it because it's an unimproved property. But the state requires the form, and so it can be like pulling teeth sometimes to get them to provide just an unimproved seller disclosure. In this case, similar, we want to do the property, the address, the city, the state, zip, county. Okay, so, and the seller. Sometimes it could be, let's say, the estate of Gertrude Mueller. And Gertrude has passed along, and so the estate is selling the property, and they would come down here and probably just put don't know the whole way down. Or they could even say exempt. They could have a letter, and when this is supplied, if someone asks, an auditor asks about it, you could say, okay, well, it's an estate, and they're exempt from it. And then there might be some documentation required with that. Remember, I take my cues from the state, so when an auditor shows up at the office and says, I want to audit your files and look at your files, I've got to say, okay, what's in these files? And that's why we collect the paperwork before we pay and make sure that these files are complete. In this case, a seller is or is not occupying the property, so they're not occupying it. It could be second home, or it could be non-owner occupied investment property. And then they go ahead and fill out all these questions. And again, the questions are pretty similar in each state. Do you have legal authority to sell it? Are there easements, rights of way? Yes, no, don't know. I don't want to go over each question here, but I do want to emphasize that they need to be as honest as possible. And this is a document. Yeah, Alex? Oh, let me go back here, and I thought I heard someone, so let's see if there's, nope, no questions. This is a document that needs. We're good. Yep. No. Okay. We have a little bit of a delay there, so I apologize. It's a document that is required, so we want to make sure that they answer this honestly. And if they don't know, that's fine. They truly don't know. But if there was a boundary dispute, if, let's say, for example, the neighbor was like, hey, that's my fence. It's on my property. You're like, well, no, we built it. Well, it was built over the property line, so technically it would be the neighbor's fence, but there's a boundary dispute. Where is that property line? We thought it was here and there, and then they eventually resolved it, let's say, but there was a dispute, so they would have to honestly answer yes. There was a boundary dispute, so right there they'd be answering yes. It doesn't mean that it's not saleable or a marketable title can't be acquired. It simply means that, you know, something happened along those 40 years that this person owned the house. And when you own a house that long, a lot of things can happen. Joint maintenance of right-of-way, of easements. So easements are a common thing. Covenants, conditions, restrictions, CC&Rs. Nope, it's an individual house, or yes. Household water, is it supplied by a public water system, private or publicly owned water system? Yes. If shared, are there written agreements? No. And so on and so forth. So just go through each one accurately. And it's okay to say, I don't know. Or in, let's say, this case, on-site sewer system, let's say it's a public sewer system, so questions that pertain to a septic system, you would say not applicable, NA. And so on and so forth. If the roof leaked, you got to answer yes. Has the basement flooded? Now remember, if there was a claim on something, let's say the basement flooded, and there was a claim on it, there's an insurance system that shows that claim. So if they don't answer this properly, if they lie on this, and then you move into the house and your client finds out there was an insurance claim for a flood later on, then that seller is liable. And we are liable if we knew about it and didn't disclose it. The one thing about these seller disclosures is it's not just about whether the seller is telling the truth. It's about whether we have constructive knowledge and if we know anything about that. Let's say you're listing Aunt Thelma's house, and Aunt Thelma, you know she had a flood a few years ago. She was crying about it. It was a big to-do. And then she goes and lists this house with you, and she states right here that there was never a flood. It's our obligation to tell the truth, and that's where we say, hey, Aunt Thelma, what about 5 years ago? And she says, well, I don't want to disclose that. It might hurt the marketing for the house. No, 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 no. Aunt Thelma, we have to tell the truth on this. Well, if you're gonna force me to do that, I'm gonna get another agent. In that case, say, go ahead, that's fine. And then we want to report it. We want to let the state of Washington know, as well as the association or the MLS. It's very unfair to us to be honest and be, and be cut out of this listing or this sale because we're telling the truth. And so I have no problem tattling on someone who won't tell the truth on this kind of document. So if that ever comes up, let me know, and I'll help you kind of walk through that. Alex, tattling is a technical term, so remember that one. So yeah, it's a goofy.
I made a note.
You're walking a fine line, but we always want to be honest. Honest is always the best way to go. But it is our legal obligation too. Remember, our legal obligation, if we know something is wrong with that house and we don't say anything, then a few years later, those lawyers start coming after us as well as the seller, and they'll win. And that's when we have to basically make an errors and omissions claim. But we don't like doing that, so please, please, please do not do that. Okay, so we go through this page by page, electrical systems, wood stoves, fireplace inserts, homeowners associations, environmental issues, waste or filled dirt, standing water, drainage problems, etc., etc. Lead-based paint, we're getting pretty far beyond 1978, so typically a seller has no knowledge of lead-based paint is what they check. It'd just be very hard. I mean, I've got a listing where the guy is 90 years old, and he certainly doesn't remember lead-based paint in 1960. But maybe it was used. I mean, people just didn't pay attention that much, and they just don't remember if it was lead-based paint or not. And at this point, there's 7 or 8 layers of paint on top of that, if it were. So that's typically what people are going to check: is no reports or no known knowledge. Manufactured home, not applicable unless it's applicable. So they've initialed every page, and then the end of it they sign it. So that's where they sign it, they initial the pages, they sign it at the end, and then there's one more page, and this is pretty much for the buyer. And the buyer, in this case in Washington, will sign it typically in this section 3, paragraph 1. They hereby acknowledge that they've received this, but they're not waiving any rights. So if you do have a buyer, you don't want them signing down here because you don't want to waive your rights or revoke the offer. You just want to sign and say you acknowledge that you read it. So that's the buyer side. And again, Charlotte asked, do we need this back? Yes, absolutely. We need our client, the seller, to sign it, and we need the buyer to sign it and initial where appropriate. And we have full acknowledgement that everybody has seen and signed this document, and we need it for the file. Okay. Any questions on seller disclosures? Brokers have signed the lead-based paint disclosure. Correct. Yes, Lynn, in Washington, we do sign that as well. And again, it's just an acknowledgement saying that we presented it, and federal law and state law require it. Anything else? Boom, boom, boom? No. Okay. Thanks, everyone. No, this is good. We're moving along nicely. I've got half a cup of tea, and I got half a cup of water. So I'm in pretty good shape. I'm going to get this sucker back up there. Let's see where we are on our list. Lead-based paint. I'll show you that form real quickly. It's nothing too spectacular. It's pretty much just kind of similar to that one paragraph, that section of the seller disclosure. So back to statewide forms. And lead-based paint. Let's see, what form is that? Form 22J. There it is. The standalone form. Let's take a look at that. Okay, so same deal, dated when you're getting all this paperwork signed, the listing agreement, the seller disclosure, and this as well. You fill this out when you're taking that listing. This is paperwork that we want to supply on the front end, not on the back end with the offer. So same questions here. Seller has no knowledge, typically. Seller has no reports. But they might, so ask them, just say, hey, do you have any knowledge of lead-based paint in this house? They might say, oh, yeah, I remember we painted this with lead-based paint in 1969. Okay, well then, boom, answer it honestly, and let's move on. And let's go ahead, the seller signs it and initials down here. So that's kind of goofy. It's always bothered me that they sign it and initial it, but so be it. And then buyer, when we leave this one blank, when they go ahead and make an offer, they can fill this part out accordingly. And then the selling broker and the listing broker. So this is where we would sign it if we're the listing agent here. Okay, the lead-based paint, we've taken care of our required forms. But for me, when I'm taking a listing in Washington, we require an Exhibit A that comes from the title company. So I typically include that in my forms as well. We also are required by law to deliver the Law of Real Estate Agency pamphlet. So it's this sucker right here. So regardless of whether it's a listing or it is an offer you're about to make on behalf of the client, you want to make sure you give them this Law of Real Estate Agency pamphlet. If you don't know where to find that, let me know and we'll track it down for you. It's pretty much available, especially in Washington with Northwest MLS, Tri-City, Spokane. Everyone's got it right there on their MLS because it's required by state law. Okay. So now we've got the Exhibit A, we've got the seller disclosure, we have got the lead-based disclosure for our 1940 house. We've got all these documents, and we've been given permission, again, with that exclusive sale and listing agreement with the seller. We can go ahead and put this house on the market. So you bring all these forms over. You, of course, can use electronic signatures, whether it's DocuSign or Transaction Desk or any other electronic signature form to get all these things signed and sent to them. It's pretty slick. I do like doing it just because, yeah.
No, to bring it. Yeah, to put your paper.
Okay, let's, we got We got someone not muted. Let's see what we...
I got him.
Oh, you did? Okay, thanks, Alex. So the paperwork we have all ready to go. We're at this. We went over to their house. We walked through the house. We really have a nice feel for them, for the house. We get all this paperwork. Now we can legally market the house. Okay? I do see Lynn asked a question here, so let me get to that. Should the agency law pamphlets need to be signed or initialed by a client and returned for the company file? Yes, if you can. The reason I didn't mention that is it's not a huge deal. It's one of these things where the states they require it, but they just look for it in the file. And whether there's a signature or an initial there or not, they don't care. That's a little secret that I didn't tell you. But so as long as we have it in there, it's like, hey, look, we supplied it. If they really, really dug and they saw that you had it later and or you delivered it via email, that's going to be fine. The state really, really, really only cares about the earnest money receipt in the file, and they want to see the purchase and sale agreement in there, but this is one of those things that's way down on the back burner, and they just don't care. Auditors just don't care that much about it. Are FSBO sellers in Washington also required to sign submit lead-based paint disclosure? Yes, they are. Yep, if they're selling a property, those for sale by owners need to know the laws. That's part of what is it's kind of tenuous about for sale by owners. They want to say, hey, I've sold a house before. I know what I'm doing. I don't need you. But they kind of do, because a lot of them forget these forms. They don't have the seller disclosure, lead-based paint, or any of that stuff. But it is required by state law. And it's not just a matter of agents and brokers. It's a matter of everybody selling a property. Okay, so we did Law of Real Estate Agency pamphlet. We've got these forms now. So we've got a whole bunch of forms back. We have the legal right now to sell and list and market this property. We have forms that we can upload into our listing. And so now we basically have a listing. At this point, when you go out and get it, or if you're going to do it electronically, get on the phone with your client and say, okay, what day do you want to sell it? And get it really on the market. You're officially pulling the trigger on that. And so you really want to communicate with them. We'll kind of get into that in timelines. But now you've got these forms, and we're going to upload them to the MLS. So let's go back over here to Paragon. I'm going to get rid of this property info. We don't need that anymore. Okay. Let me get rid of this. And here's listings. So it says listings, add a residential listing. You can also maintain listings. I can maintain basically everybody in the company. So I've got, all of them. But in this case, we want to add a listing. So this is where we do that new listing. Or, the MLSs are going to do that for you here in this with this form. So basically, we're filling this sucker out. We're going, okay, this is a new listing, save. It's a duplicate listing, no. Potential short sale, no. The R's mean required, and the P's mean required for partial listing. So if you just want to fill out a little bit of information and follow up and finish it up this week, you definitely have to get the P's to create that. Listing agent, Joe Kelly, subtype, it is... Over here, I can go to, let's see, residential site built, and I can do the address, and I can do the price, 190,000, and the area grid. Now, this one is kind of why I go back to old listings. I guess I got rid of that. Home. So those of you in Washington, so if I go 2924 34th, and I pull up an old listing, I can basically find that area grid right up here, A210/047. Instead of going through these books and going to the MLS and trying to track it down, it's like, oh, I know it's A210/047. So as I'm doing my listing, new residential, I can go to area grid here, and I can go A to 10, and there they all are right there, 047, 046, 045. So I can put that in there, and voila. So I got it from an old listing. Direction, north, south, north N, and then blocks 34, because it's on 34th Avenue, east, and 29. Open all. And again, I don't want to get too deep into this because you can take the listing class and it's pretty self-explanatory. The property data forms, this is pretty much everything, the same fields. And it's the same with matrix as well. You know, you basically are just, you're putting that in there, and the RMLS, just one by one, each item. Acres more or less, and these aren't required. Again, the red means required. And so, but you want to get these in here. So lot square footage, approximately 6,200. Taxes, this one was 1,600. Special designation, no. A special designation means, like, let's say it's an elderly couple and their taxes are on a fixed income and they're very low income. Their tax designation is going to be a special exception. So they might not pay any tax on it. So you do want to find that out, because, and the reason is people that are buying it, they want to find out what their taxes are going to be. Like I'd mentioned earlier, are they going to be $1,600 a year? If it says zero, they might go into it going, fantastic, taxes are zero, or they're $100 a year, and then they get their first tax bill and it's like, here's $1,600 I owe, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that it was $1,600. Surprise, surprise, because the listing said zero. That's why we do special tax designation, to give them that heads up. Body of water, you know, Lake Sammamish, Lake Pend Oreille, whatever it's going to be. Legal, remember, and sometimes from those old listings, like I can go in here and I could go, just kind of a trick of the trade, I can just go, boom, look at, there's the legal, and I can copy and paste that right in there. Okay, or you can say see Exhibit A, and then supply the Exhibit A into Associated Docs. So there's the legal public remarks where you wax poetic about the gorgeous house and blah, blah, blah. Agent remarks where you say something like, owner sleeps by day, please give 24-hour notice. Vicious dog that may attack and kill, so don't just approach the house. Whatever it's going to be. That's where you kind of put in those private agent remarks to give us each a heads up on what specifically about this property we have to be aware of. And then directions, you know, north on Oak Street, south on Hamilton Street for 3 blocks, houses on the right. So pretty simple there. Elementary, school district, like if I just came in and I didn't know anything, I could go back to this quick search and go, oh, the previous listing, they had school district, Spokane District 81, Ferris, Adams, and Chase. So I could go back to my listing and just go, oh, okay, so school district 81. Ta-da, there it is. I'll put that in there. It's required. The other ones aren't required, but I know what they are. And you want to put in as much information as you can. It really helps. Possession, let's say closing, and closing agent could be, you know, Angie at First American. Won't give me that, but it could just be Angie. You know, typically in here is where I put the company. I do like Fatco, First American Title Company. And power company, it could be City Light in Seattle. Water company could be just the city providing water. You know, and you want to be careful about this. If you're in the city, it's pretty standard because you're talking about the sewer and the electricity. If you're in a suburb or you're kind of out in the boonies a little bit, there's PUDs, there's special electric districts. Small ones sometimes. Here in Spokane, we have one out in the valley called Barradale, and it just covers like 1,000 houses, and that's it. So it's a small little district, and you want to make sure that you get the right power company and water company. Co-op broker compensation, that's where we would do the 3%. because that's what we're offering to another company to come bring us a buyer. Co-op variable. If it's going to be variable, then yeah, that's where you want to put a V in there, because we don't know. It could be a short sale, and we think it's going to be 6% split 3 and 3, but it's a short sale. And the short sale, when they approve it, they're like, no, no, no. For us to approve this, it's going to be 5%. You can split it half there, 2.5 and 2.5. So here, if we put that V in there, it means variable. It means don't expect this 3%. We're hoping for it. But again, over-communicate. Whenever you're dealing with another agent, over-communicate rather than under-communicate. And you all know the rule about assumptions and assuming. So you want to make sure that they know exactly what's going on here. Listing type, aha, exclusive right to sell. Don't want agency. REO, real estate owned by the bank, no. Short sale, no, no. Auction, no. 1031 exchange, if you ever run into that, you can ask me directly, but it's basically exchanging a like property for another like property without having any sort of tax consequences. They do have to be like properties, and it does have to be set up before the sale. You can't say after the fact, yeah, I sold my house and I just want to buy another one like it, or I sold my investment property, I want to buy another one just like it, and I don't want any sort of tax exemption, but it's already closed. It doesn't work that way. You got to set it up on the front end, and you have to make sure that title and escrow know about it, and the money stays in escrow or is transferred to a new escrow in order to use that money to buy the new house. Okay, and you can still finance it. You could, $250,000 down and $250,000 loan. I mean, but that $250,000 will be exempt from capital gains. That's the 1031 exchange. It's an IRS rule. List date, very important. So you can go in here and do a list date, the 14th, an expiration date of, let's say November 30th. And if there's another list agent, it doesn't even have to be with our office. I mean, if you have a friend at another office, you can put them in here. Or if it's someone at our office, in case you're not available, boom, this is where you'd put them. And here in Spokane, we can do open houses. I have to do one for someone this weekend, and that's where I'm going to put that. And then it automatically uploads into the automated MLS open house forum. Building characteristics. Well, this is where we get into the details. First bedrooms, third floor bedrooms, first level bathrooms, third floor bathrooms, total bathrooms, let's say 3. First level fireplace, third level fireplace, basement family room, first level family room, so on and so forth. I usually use about half of these. I put the bedrooms and bathrooms in there. I don't really do square footage unless it is goofy. If it's the same footprint in the basement and the whole thing's finished, I'd put like 2,500 square foot on the first level and 2,500 square feet on the basement level. Basement percentage, let's say only 50% of it's down there. So it could be like a California split, and you only have half of it is underground, half of it's basement. So that would be 50%. Or again, if it's a full footprint, it would be 100% basement. New construction, no, this is our 1940 house. And if it is new construction, you put that pertinent information in there. Garage, built 1940, number of stories 2, year remodel 2006. Contact name. So let's say it is a sleeper. They sleep during the day and they want to be notified directly. Well, that's where you can put their name in here. You can put Jim and his cell phone number. Just remember, if you do that, other agents see it. So if this thing expires and you don't catch it, trust me, within an hour, there will be 20 phone calls calling Jim, going, hey, Jim, I can list your house. Did you notice that your listing expired? I can do a better job. See what my fantastic marketing skills will do for you, blah, blah, blah. So Jim's going to get inundated with calls. So a lot of agents, what they'll do is just put their number in there. They put Joe. And then they put the number in there, and so they call me, and then I call the clients. Okay. I'm just reading the questions, the chat room. Lynn, actually very helpful to see this info again. Thank you. The input class. Yeah, every MLS has an input class. And they're good. Yeah, the instructors are fantastic. I'm just kind of going off of my experience and my knowledge. So if you guys are interested in this, do take the input classes at the MLS. Occupied, contact phone number, occupied by owner, tenant, or you can leave it blank. Assessed square footage and then total square footage. We talked about that earlier. Here it'd be like 864 in total. I don't use unfinished basements, so I would put whatever double that is, 16, I don't know, 1678. Oh, I'm sorry, 1778. So I'd do that. Then here in Spokane with Paragon, once we open that up, we can go ahead and do paved road, public road. There's a view and a fenced backyard and a sprinkler system. There's a golf course view. There's a shop, so on and so forth. VA, FHA, now remember this, if it doesn't qualify for those, don't mark these. Or if it's something really small, you saw a little bit of peeling paint on the window, but other than that, it's pretty much going to qualify for FHA. Great, you can put FHA on there, but put in the remarks, may need a little bit of touch-up paint so that they're not surprised that it won't go FHA. Or maybe the owner's going to do that, and they're prepared to do that. Also, check limits. I see too many people going, hey, this house qualifies for FHA. In Spokane County, that limit is $271,000. So they can't list a house for $350,000 and say it qualifies for FHA. It's unrealistic. People aren't going to put, $80,000 down. FHA borrowers have lower credit. They want to put as little down as possible. So, and that's why I also get on sellers who want to sell their house for $280,000. Or let's say $290,000. It's like, wow, you're $290,000, 3.5% down, gets the loan amount down to $280,000, and the limit here in this county is $271,000. So now you're excluding all those FHA buyers. So try to get it as close to that $271,000 as possible. But you want to, if you're going to mark FHA, you want to make sure you know that there are FHA limits in every county in America. Lakefront, waterfront, ponds, creek, accessibility for ramps, basement full, partial, finished, unfinished, etc. And then the exterior, stucco, brick, metal, vinyl, wood, fiberboard, all that stuff. So pretty self-explanatory. Make sure you get the heating right. Understand whether it's gas or electric or both. And if it's gas, it's forced air typically, or if it is radiant, and I love radiant, the greatest heat in the world is radiant floor. Central AC or wall AC, for example, sometimes you see those built in. Window AC, if they're going to leave the ACs, you can put in window AC, but if they're going to, you don't want to check window AC and have them take the AC units with them. Roof composite is typically what you're going to do here unless it is tile or wood shake or slate or metal. Showing information is important. Lockbox, you really want to get on the same page with the seller. Lockbox, caution call listing agent or it's vacant. These are the best kind to show, lockbox and vacant. It's like, hey, just go show it whenever you want. It's vacant. You can show it whenever. The only thing, be aware of this, though. A lot of lock boxes expire. They start at, let's say, 9 a.m. and they expire at 9 p.m. So you can change that, but you have to do it actually on the lockbox. So make sure that you understand your lockbox and your listing information. Again, the guy might be, let's say the seller works from 6 a.m. till 3 p.m., and so that's when you can just go and show at will whenever you want. And so you want to make sure the lockbox opens at 6 a.m. in case there is someone there. I've had it recently. I've had people call me and say, hey, I've got a buyer that wants to see the house before they go to work. Can we get in there at 7:30? And I forgot to do this. I was like, oh, crud. I forgot to change the lockbox hours till from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. Eventually I went and did that. They showed it the next day. But do make sure you remember that. And then public sewer connected or septic system, whatever the site improvements might be. And amenities, this is where it just all the fluff. Deck, pool in ground, pool above ground, spa, sauna, tennis court, greenhouse, storage shed, patio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Design, pretty self-explanatory. If it's not on here, if it's not a rancher or an A-frame or a colonial, just put other. You can always put it in the notes too. It could be contemporary. In the notes, you can put California splits or a special custom home. Could be on here. I think there's custom. No, there isn't. Okay, so you could just put custom home, 5 levels or whatever it's going to be. Dining, formal, informal, so on and so forth. Fireplaces, garage, just a lot of information. And so you check all those and you hit save. And it all loads up here. And then we're pretty much good to go. Okay, so I've got all my information in there. This is the listing. Now let me check chat. Any other questions? Nope, Lynn had the last question. Time's pretty good, 11:34 Pacific. The tea's getting cold, so that is okay. I can deal with cold tea. We're getting through it. Okay, so on this listing, now we have the listing information in there. Now we just need to upload photos and we need to upload associated docs. Pretty easy to do. The key to the photos, like if you have a professional photographer do it, and I do, my listing's in Seattle. I have someone I contact here in Spokane. There's someone I contact also in North Idaho. So I don't have anyone yet. I've got my first possible listing in Oregon coming up, and I don't have any in Alabama. But eventually as those come, I just hire professional photographers. They send me photographs, and typically the best photographs are like, 6 megs, really, really big, beautiful, detailed photographs. Well, that's too big a file for any MLS to upload. So you typically want them about 250 to 350 kilobits, somewhere in there. So if you do have a photographer, tell them, hey, can you reduce this to this size? And then they can send them all to you that way, and then they're much easier to upload. Or if you're taking your own photos, just remember that. Okay, so let's see. I want to save this. I'm going to save it as a partial because there's a lot of stuff in here that I don't have. So I wish, continue to input. Okay, now that I saved it as a partial, I've got an actual partial temporary number. And I can also do pictures. So if I do pictures, I could upload multiple pictures from my desktop or whatever, wherever you keep those files. So in this case, I want to do that. This is kind of slick here in Spokane. I really like this. So I'm going to do a couple things here. Oops. Come on, Mr. Computer. Let me do what I'm going to do. We'll do Gordon Moore's house. So I'm going to move those over here. Oh, didn't work. Okay. There. This is what I typically do with these pictures. And I can just drag these over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I dragged too big a one. That was 11, so that one wasn't changed out. Oh, that one's too big too. There. So let's say I did these 3 photos, and that's all I wanted to do. That's actually a good example of where they sent too big of photos, and I had them resend them in a smaller way. So now I go back here, and I've got these right here, and I just hit Start Upload. Voila, there they are. And the primary photo in every MLS has to be one of the house. So I didn't pick one of the house, but there you get the idea. And I can do 20 here. Some MLSs do 7 or 8 or 9. Some do 25 or 40. There's a whole bunch there. So you just kind of pick and choose, upload them, and there they are. And you can move them around a little bit. It's like, no, I want the bathroom to be the primary photo. So you can move all these around a little bit if you need to. So good. We have that. Listing detail. So this is kind of what it's starting to look like, our listing. And now it's incomplete, but it's getting closer. And then documents. So uploading documents basically is very similar. If I'm going to add, remember that lead-based paint form, that seller disclosure, Exhibit A, this is where I would do that. So I'm going to add new. I'm going to call it the seller disclosure. Oops. And actually, you know what, we could probably, you can do multiple files. I think this one, disclosure and lead paint, you know, just so they know kind of what it is. And then I choose the file. I'm going to go back to Gordon's file. So I create a desktop file for all my listings and all my different stuff. And so then I want to make sure it's all in here. Here they are right here. Oops, I'm only do one at a time. So there's just the seller disclosure, and I hit save. Okay, there it is. And now I can add another one. So that was just the seller disclosure. This one is going to be the lead-based paint, and I can upload that. Lead paint, and hit save. And there it is, lead paint, seller disclosure. So when someone comes to make an offer, these documents are already in there. This is where you'd put a pre-inspection in there as well. If you're in Seattle, Portland, hot markets, you want to do a pre-inspection, you'd upload those. So you've got all the documents in there that anyone making an offer would want to see and be able to use. Okay, so then I just hit, basically, I'm out of here, listing. I hit save as partial. So everything's been saved in there. So I continue to input. I go over to pictures. I've got these pictures in there. I go to documents. I've got these documents in there. I go to listing, detail. This is what it kind of looks like. So I'm pretty close to getting this thing live. Now when I want to make it live, basically once I've got everything in the R's and the P's and everything required, I go in here and I hit save listing, and that makes it live. But aha, voila, there's a whole bunch of things I didn't do. So all these modifies are basically like errors I've got to fix. So the address I didn't put in there, the range and the town I didn't put in there, the street type I didn't. There's just a whole bunch in here. There's 19 mistakes I made. And I can go modify them right here and get them done. And then when I hit save, it'll become live instantly. Okay, so that becomes a live listing when I do that. But for now, it's just a partial listing. And I'm going to go ahead and say finished. So I'm finished with my partial listing, and I'll save it until I finish up with some more pictures and some more information. And my client said he wants to list it on Thursday. I always prefer Thursdays because it gets it in there before the weekend. And now we've got a listing. Okay, so let's go back to our template. So we've done seller disclosure, lead-based paint forms. We've uploaded the forms. We've uploaded the pictures. Okay. Any questions? Can you show me send in Identisign? I can, Lynn, but it's when you come in and bring that file, I'll go over it with you. It is part of our classes. So we do have one e-signature and transaction desk class. And we can also send that to you as well. So Alex, will you make a note, and we'll just send the link for that class to Lynn.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's like a whole class. It'll take me 2 hours to go into transaction desks and e-signatures and Identisign and all that. So right now I want to keep things moving along, and we want to move to ordering signs and producing flyers. So we've got our listing in there, great. I don't really need much of that anymore. But I need to order signs. Now, we have signs online. Our online store has them. So if you need signs, just a generic Kelly Wright sign, we can do that. We'll box it and we'll send it to you. You can also custom design your own, or let's say you have yours in your inventory. So I keep 10 of my own signs. I never have that many listings. So, really I never need more than 4 or 5. I have name writers that I attach, those 6x24 name writers I attach to my signs. So there's a lot of stuff that I'll attach to it and make sure that I've got those signs, or I keep them with a sign company. So let's say the Tri-Cities in Seattle, they both have the companies that I use there to put the posts up. They've got my signs. So I can just call them up and say, hey, can you put up my sign at this address on Thursday morning? And they'll say, sure, we'll go do that for a fee, typically $35, $40, $45, depends on the area. So talk to your manager if you don't know a sign company, but here in Spokane, I do L&M signs. I can also do Cress. You know, just let your fingers do the walking on the internet, and you'll find a company. I mean, I could do Tri-Cities sign placement. There it is right there, Tri-City Post. So there's a sign company where I can log in, and I can have them put a flyer box. I can have them put a sign post. And if they have my sign, they can go ahead and put that there as well. So I've got all my information there. Fantastic. And they'll send me an invoice for $40 when they take it down. Typically, let's say the $40 is to put it up and take it down. So they're pretty simple and very, very convenient. Don't try doing this on your own. It's not worth saving $35 or $40. I could do, let's see, Spokane, C-R-E-S. Cress. Oh, what is this guy? Oh, I guess that's not going to work. Spokane, what's the acronym for Cress? Complete real estate signs, estate. Nope. Real estate signs. Build a sign. Nope. Huh. Okay, well, let's go back. And I use L&M, so I don't really use Cress. L&M Signs Spokane. There it is, L&M. So I can just order pricing. Bam, I can just send them an email. So there's that. I can go, bam, shoot them an email, say, hey, Jeff, I need a sign up on Thursday at 123 Oak Street. Can you do that for me? He'll shoot me an email back, says, yep, you got it. And it just shows up beautifully. So figure out who your sign company is going to be and figure out if they're going to have the signs, the actual signs. They'll do the posts. They own those posts, and they own the flyer boxes. But are you going to put the sign up on the post, or are you going to give them signs? They'll come into the office and pick them up, or come to your house and pick them up, and then put them up at the property that you designate. And then when they take them down, they typically will send you an invoice for $40, sometimes cheaper. And they have their pricing here, and so you just have to kind of figure out what sign company you want to use. If you have questions, you can let me know, and I can refer you out to some people. Okay, so that's the sign, ordering the sign and getting that up. Now the flyer, we are working on 2 professionally designed flyers that will work in Word. Right now we have them in Publisher, but I know the majority of you guys do not have Publisher. So I'll give you an example. Oh, actually, here's one right here on my desktop. And again, the kids in the office laugh at me because my computer is so old and slow, but I'm pretty tight with the computer. Actually, just tight with money. Okay, so here it is where I can put in the address. I can change this information, okay? I can put like an MLS number here, 2017, whatever it's going to be. I can manipulate that. And I can also manipulate this picture. I can bring it in here, and I can set it up. And also these pictures here, I can take another picture like this and bring it into that box, and look at that. It just automatically fills in those boxes, and there's the big picture. So this is Gordon's house. Don't need letters there, 201745. Let's say that's the MLS number. So I put that in there. It's got our color orange across there. There's his living room and kitchen and dining room. This is my fluff. This is where I copy and paste typically from the MLS, but first time on the market, bam, bam, 350. This right here, I can't move this Kelly Wright out of there. I can change this. I could put Alex Veselit, and then go, geez, Alex, you just got uglier. Sorry about that. You want to get that picture out of there. Or put it back in, whatever you want to do. So we've got this template, and I can send you guys this if you want it, but this is publisher, you know, changing the phone numbers. So you can manipulate some of the information, but you can't manipulate it all. Okay? So I can manipulate a little bit, but not a lot. And then you save it, and then you print it in color, and voila, you have a flyer. So we've got a professional graphic designer that's creating 2 of these in Word. So you can, the idea is that you drag and drop those pictures. Okay, so you can take, let's say, an outdoor picture, drag and drop that there. If that shows up. Did I do that right? Oh, yeah, drag and drop. There we go. So, whoops, I did 2 of them. Anyway, there we go. So Publisher, I like working with Publisher, but we'll have those ones ready here pretty soon, and you guys can go ahead and use those. I'm thinking about 2 weeks or so. Okay, so there's a flyer, and then I print off 20 or 30 of those. I either put them in the flyer box. I typically, when a listing goes up and a sign goes up, I want to make sure the sign's straight. It's just the kind of the anal retentive nature of me. So I don't like crooked signs. I'll adjust them, make sure they're straight. I choose different sign people because I know they're going to be straight, and I let them know, hey, I don't like crooked signs. Don't be sloppy. Put that stake in the ground firmly. Find good ground to put it in, and then put that sign in straight. So I let them know. I go out there, make sure everything's picture perfect, make sure that I put the flyers in the flyer box. It's like, voila, perfect. Because you have to go out there anyway with a lockbox as well. The lockbox you can get from the MLSs. Spokane, Seattle, Portland, you buy them. Some MLSs let you lease them. Tri-Cities, for example, you just go into the MLS and grab one and use it. You have to register it, and then when you're finished, you just bring it back. It's like you check it out like a library. So a lockbox with a key to the house, put that on the door, make sure the sign is up nice and clean, make sure the listing, it looks good, make sure the flyers are in the box. I mean, just all of that. It's like, bam, we're ready to go. When all of that is ready, that's when I pull the trigger. The sign went up Thursday morning. I pull the trigger on that listing. I go back here and I go, you know what? I'm going to pull the trigger on my listing on Thursday afternoon. And it goes live right away. And so all of a sudden you start getting phone calls. People are like, hey, I want to see this listing. Can I go out there? I want to call, make an appointment. And bam, you're on the MLS, and you're going 1,000,000 miles a minute at that point. So we got the sign, we got the lockbox with the key in it, we have the flyers, and we are all set. Any questions on that? Alex is kind of working on logos and stuff. Thank you. Oh, Alex was talking about Listing Booster. Just happen to have one here. Let me get my picture so that I can see my face. There it is. Make sure I got this in the right. There we go. Okay, can you guys see that? So that is a Listing Booster. Oh yeah, good. All right. So that's a Listing Booster. What do you call it? Writer. And what they do is when they go, it's assigned to your property, and Alex can send you one of these. We've got lots of boxes. So if you have a listing, use these. And we pay for it. You guys don't have to pay anything for it, but it'll boost your listing. It'll create a little website and flyers for it, and it'll market it on different websites. And then when they go to view it, 29072, when they type that in and text it, then that lead's going to go to you. So their phone number's captured. They can put their email address in there and say, hey, I'm interested in 123 Oak Street. Tell me more. So then your listing is boosted and you get leads from it. It's a no-brainer. So any listings you have, talk to Alex. He'll send you a Listing Booster writer, and you've seen them before. If you haven't used them before, you've seen them. They're out there, and they've got phone numbers, text this number, and so on and so forth. That's effectively what it does. And it does create a flyer. It's not the greatest flyer in the world, but it does create a flyer for you. Okay, so that's listing booster. Let's see where we are on our agenda. The offer, multiple offers, and then we'll get into timelines. So now you've got this listing and you're going to get an offer. And I don't want to get too far into this because this is going to be more selling paperwork, but I want to touch on it because once you have an offer, what do you do with it? So now you're representing the seller and you have to take a look at that. Make sure, one of the most important things is to read it carefully and slowly and look at what adjustments have been made. Is there, let's say the price is full price, fantastic. I'm getting $350,000 for this house, but they're asking for $10,000 in a seller contribution towards closing costs. Well, effectively, that's a net now of $340,000, not $350,000. And they want us to pay for a $500 warranty. So instead of being $340,000, it's $339,500. So it keeps coming off of that net price that we want our seller to be able to walk away with. Remember, there is the seller's part of escrow, half of escrow. There's a seller's title insurance policy. There is excise tax. In Washington is 1.78%. So check the excise tax or any additional state taxes that might go with that. And then there's commissions. So some people say roughly 10%. It's less than that. Let's say if the commission is 6%, excise tax is 1.7. That's 7.78% plus $600 for escrow and $1,000. So it's $8,000 for a $350,000 purchase. It's not 10%. So yeah, roughly 8%-ish. But make sure that you look at this carefully. If you have competing offers, place them down on a big table one by one with your client and go over them carefully. If you're in a hot market, you can take multiple offers at a certain date. Say seller will review offers Monday at 5 p.m., which means over the weekend, everybody's got to get those offers in, and then let's say you get 3 offers, bring them out to the seller, sit down, have a cup of wine or, glass of wine, cup of coffee, whatever you're going to do. Say, let's take a look at these things. And all right, we've got offer 1, offer 2, and offer 3. Offer 1 is for $350,000, but they're asking for $10,000 in seller contribution, so it's really $340,000. Offer B is $345,000, but they're asking $3,000 in seller contribution, so it's really $342,000. And offer C is $339,000, but cash. Then they're going to have to decide. They're going to have to go, okay, $339,000 cash, and if it were me, I would be advising my client $339,000 cash is the best, but obviously it's not as much money. So there's more risk in these other ones because they have contingencies. So let's counter offer the $339,000 cash and say, hey, can you get up to the matching offer of $340,000 cash, and we'll accept your offer. And a lot of times that's when you get on the phone and say, hey, will you do this? We've got 3 offers. Can you move it up a little bit? And that's when you can negotiate on behalf of your client because you have that exclusive sale and listing agreement. And they are a client, not a customer. So you're negotiating on their behalf. You're trying to get that price up a little bit. Sometimes people counter like all 3 and see what comes in. You can do that, but it's kind of a pain. I like to do highest and best. Say, hey, look, we've got 3 offers on the table. Is this your highest and best? And if you want to go to one specifically, a cash offer, and say, hey, can you match these other ones at $340,000? Or let's say, the ones at $342,000, and it's got a financing contingency or a contingency to sell their house, and this one's just cash. $340,000 cash is much better than $342,000 with all these contingencies because there's stuff that's going to be coming back. Whether they're going to ask to replace some electrical stuff, going to do this, going to do that, might not get financing, might fall through after 3 months, yikes. So you want to make sure you take the strongest offer, but it's up to them. Remember, we follow our cues from our clients. So if the client says, hey, I want to just go with the highest number possible and no one else is going to budge, this is highest and best, then that $342,000 is going to be the highest and best that you get. So always take your cue from the client and just advise them accordingly. Okay. Timelines. So effectively, timelines, you really want to start when you go in, make sure that you have a good, clean timeline as far as when you're going to get the listing and how long it's going to take to get ready. They got to mow the house. They got to clean out a bunch of stuff of the house. They got to get the house cleaned top to bottom. They got to get the gutters cleared out. Trim the hedges. I mean, that typically takes a couple weeks. Most smart people give themselves even a month before when they actually want to list it, and they kind of do the listing agreement when they actually put it on the market. So for me, I need at least a week and say, okay, I want you to mow the lawn, trim the hedges, you know, if you can clean the windows, everything. Just clean it like you've never cleaned it before, and that's going to take you how many days, Mr. Seller? I can do that in 4 days. Good. On the 5th day, I'm going to have my my photographer come out. And Mr. Photographer, how long is it going to take you to get, can you do it on that day, on that 5th day, and how long is it going to take you to get my photos back? Well, I can do them in 48 hours. Okay, now we're 5 days, 6, 7 days. We're a week out, and then I've got to prepare, get the sign out there, prepare. That's probably not going to be enough time. So I'm going to start the process 10 days earlier and try to get them going. If they really want it on the market, you can try to scramble and do it. I've done it before, but you know, you're doing the listing, you're uploading those photos, you are putting the photos into the flyer, you're getting the sign up, you're getting the lockbox out there, you're getting the flyers out there. It takes a lot of time. I typically like at least a week, 10 days is good, and so you really want to talk to them about timelines to begin with to get it listed. Make sure you're very cognizant of that. If they don't get you paperwork, then you know you can't really start doing business for them. So really make sure you get that listing agreement. When you go out there, bring our folders, bring professional folders and cards, and really look presentable. Be a pro. That's what we're about. Real estate is about being a pro. There's sharks out there that want this business, and they will dress to the hilt. They're going to pull up in a Porsche. They're going to say everything the seller wants to hear. So be very careful. You're in a sales competitive environment. So give yourself every advantage, look professional, act professional, and get those timelines down so that you get that listing up and there's no hiccups. Inside the listing on the counter, you can do a lot of different things. You can put up signs, little cards around the house. You can put footies in there. I leave that up to you guys and your seller. If you want to put seller disclosures on the counter, if you want to put your flyers on the counter, your cards, you can do a lot of different fluffy things to make it all pretty, but you don't have to. So timeline-wise, once you get that listing going, you're going to need some time to review offers. Be careful about offers that come in at 3 p.m. and say they want an answer by 9 p.m. It's like, whoa, this might not be enough time. Some people might be able to do that. If they're real internet savvy, they know exactly what they want. You can forward it to their email. They can digital sign it. But you might have an older couple. They don't have the internet. They go to the lake a lot, and they're back on Tuesdays. You want to make sure you've got the timeline so you can present those offers. Now, by law, we have got to present every offer. Don't withhold an offer to have an offer accepted by a friend. Don't withhold an offer to have an offer that's accepted when you're a dual agent. These are illegal things, and you will lose your license if they find out. And so don't even try. Just present every offer you can to the seller. And then when you accept an offer, when you finally figure out which offer you want to do, make sure there's enough time. If the offer is like, hey, we're going to close with cash in 2 weeks, great, that's enough time. But we're going to close with financing in 2 weeks. It's like, whoa, wait a second, this is June. How are you going to get an appraiser out there? Everyone's busy. How are you going to get your loan documents in time? So make sure there's a reasonable time, and reasonable is 30 to 45 days. Okay. If you have questions on timelines, or if something looks too tight or too short, or the financing is questionable, let me know. Just give me an email, or send me an email, or give me a call. Okay, pre-inspections. So pre-inspections are something we do in a real hot market. So Seattle, almost everything's a pre-inspection right now. They're doing it in Portland as well. North Idaho is pretty hot right now. Pre-inspection is just ordering an inspection, you're paying for it, and you're providing it to anyone wanting to make an offer so that they don't have to waste time with an inspection and waste time saying, hey, you know what, we did our inspection and we want all the pipes replaced, we want the electrical replaced, we want the roof replaced, we want you to do $50,000 worth of work, and if not, we're going to walk. Well, great, you just spent 2 weeks taking the house off the market, and you took this knucklehead's offer, and now he's asking for a ton of stuff. It's like, that's killing my time frame to sell it. So the pre-inspection is to negate and avoid that. So the pre-inspection says, hey, here's all the things wrong with this house. If when you make your offer, you can let us know what you want done. And we paid for it as a courtesy. So you're going to avoid that cost. Thank you very little. Because a lot of people, they want to use their own inspector. They think they're so, somehow someone's pulling the wool over their eyes or there's fraud involved. And it's just not the case. A licensed inspector is going to give a good inspection report. And it's really kind of a nice courtesy. So you come in with a strong offer and you're not asking for a bunch of stuff 2 weeks from now. So pre-inspections are really important. Make sure that you, if you've got that listing in a hot market, use them. Even any listing if you want. If you want to do a pre-inspection and pay $500 for it, go for it. I think it's a great thing to have. Okay, let's see, take a look at questions here. Alex and Lynn, you guys are having a private conversation, I see. Okay, but no other questions. Okay, good. So closing. Inspections went well. The appraisal came in at value. Now you're at closing. Your seller is going to sign typically before the buyer is going to sign. There's some paperwork that the seller does have to sign. It's 10, 12 pages. So it's much lighter than the loan documents and all the Patriot Act stuff that and the RESPA stuff that the buyer's got to buy or the buyer's got to sign. So typically, let's say the closing docs come in, the seller can sign almost a week before the buyer does, but typically it's a day before, a couple days before. They get that all out of the way. And then the buyer comes in and signs all their paperwork, typically the day before it funds, or they can sign it that morning, and if the loan is done right, they can fund right away and record that day down in county. Once it records and it funds, the house is the buyer's. Make sure, when going back to timelines, make sure that you understand and the seller understands that, hey, this stuff's going to happen on these days. You're going to have to be out of the house. Don't wait until the last day to have the moving van show up and then you're trying to scramble and get out of there. So prepare. Communication is important. Preparing is very important. And make sure that everybody's on the same timeline so that there's not a lot of confusion at the end. And that just takes communication with everybody, buyer, seller, lender, listing agent, selling agent, title company, escrow. Everybody needs to be on the same page. Okay, that's the most important thing. 99% of the breakdowns come from miscommunication or no communication. Everyone's just hoping things get to the finish line, they get a big fat paycheck, and don't take that chance. Don't be that person or that agent. Over-communicate with everybody and be professional, and things will get done and it will close, typically on time with no hitches. So that is it for the listing side, and the seller, basically you representing that seller. There's a ton more to this stuff, obviously, but I want to give you an idea of what it's going to take to get a listing going and give you an idea of what it's all about. Now, if it's your first listing or if you haven't done one in a while, go ahead and email me if you have questions. Hopefully this video and this webinar help you, but there's still a lot of nuances to the industry. This isn't everything. It's just kind of a rough overview of what you want to think about when you're taking a listing. Next week's class is going to be about selling and selling paperwork. So this is when we represent the buyer and what we're doing with their paperwork and what we're doing with their offers. And then week 3, we'll be back into sales and marketing and how to generate more business for you. So are there any final questions? Lynn, I think I just answered that one. Next week. Okay. Good. All right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. So this is our Fuse training for June 14th, 2017 on listing paperwork and what we want to do to prepare new listings. Again, this is just an overview. If you have any questions, you can always email me or call me. That's what I'm here for. It's busy out there, so please be patient and go out and sell. Get these listings. It's a good way to make some money and really start developing your business. So any other questions, I'm here. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and log
Thank
out
you.
and have a great week.
Hey, Joe.
Yes.
Can you email me that new itinerary for Fuse?
Yeah, I will. I don't have the